All right. So we are now on, I think this is the seventh video, the seventh session on this. We are finally working on commitment number 3 tonight. Um, First commitment was we will give ourselves to a regular lifestyle of confession and forgiveness. The second one, we will make growth and change our daily agenda. Talking about last time, talking about pulling weeds, continuous, always work. No chance to just let that fall by the wayside. We have to stay on it, and our marriages really have to go the same way. Now, as part of the review, what is the definition of marriage we're using for this study? Wow. Does anybody want to call Chris Fisher and ask? Yeah.
Covenant of companionship.
Covenant of companionship. Covenant of companionship. God made Adam, and he looked at him and went, that guy's lonely. He needs a companion. So he created a companion specific to complement Adam. When he made woman, he made her opposite yet complementary to Adam. And then he said, and for this reason I have made a woman. Your men will leave their families and they will cleave to a wife, and they will be one person, one flesh. So covenant of companionship, that is what marriage is about. It's about being the companion for that other person. Well, we'll get into some of that later. All right. Also in review, Galatians chapter 5, 19 to 23. We looked at this last time. You could call this the fruits of the Spirit and the fruits of the flesh. We learned something different about those that maybe we hadn't seen before. They are not a prescription for how to be worldly or spiritual. What are they? What are they, and why are they there? How can we use those? If they're not a prescription to do this to prove or to make ourselves spiritual, what were they? Do we remember? The evidence of what is. They are a description. They describe what's there. And so as we look through the fruits of the flesh and we see all of these evil things, if we see them in our marriage, we know there's a weed there that needs to be worked on. And there's a core. Now, most of the fruits of the flesh boiled down to selfishness when it all came down to it. And we need to work on our selfishness. If we see love, joy, peace in our marriage, we know that there's fruits of the Spirit working. If we realize that there is no gentleness, goodness, faith, if those things are not in our marriage, then we see there's something we need to work on. These lists in Galatians are warning indicators, warning signs. Do we see this in our marriage? Do we see that in our marriage? Look for those things and start working on the root problem. We said last time, you can't just take the tops off the weeds. You got to dig down to the roots, get the root out, and then it doesn't grow back. Another one grows back in its place. And it's amazing how accurate that is to our marriages as well as gardening. Okay. They swear that potting soil is like weed free, but I don't know. You put water on it and a million weeds sprout out of this weed free potting soil. And our marriages, we're kind of that potting soil. You put a little bit of marriage on us and all of a sudden there's all these weeds popping up. So that's last month's lesson. We talked about the commitments. Now, this month, we are going to dive into commitment number 3. Commitment number 3 is we will work together to build a sturdy bond of trust. We've looked at what marriage is, what it isn't, what love is. We've looked at 2 gospel commitments already. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move to I called it a critical foundation stone for our marriages. In starting to prep for the 100th anniversary stuff, I was looking at out on this corner. There is a block out here on the foundation that is marked as a cornerstone block. It's kind of high on the foundation, so it kind of makes me think that somebody put that one in extra, because seems to me the original cornerstone would have to kind of be down at the bottom of the foundation. But anyhow, there's a cornerstone out there. There is a block that supports weight. Well, a critical foundational stone of every marriage is trust. And honestly, that's not even something that you're only going to hear from Christian counselors. Unsaved people will tell you, if you don't have trust in your marriage, you don't have a functioning marriage. Any team doesn't work without trust. Any marriage doesn't work right without trust. Now, the interesting thing about trust, and I've seen it happen different ways, trust can be quickly destroyed by a single event. One single event can completely destroy trust. But one of the things the author points out is that they can also just be eroded and crumble over time with a million little things that just eat away at that foundation stone of trust. So the problem, and actually I put the quote in here, is from the author. Trust is readily given, easily broken, and costly to repair. I saw this, going back in a work type environment, going back to college, early college. I got a job with the university's wash crew. We washed and fueled airplanes. And there had been a couple of crews before I hired on, yes, before me, that had honestly been very careless, very lazy, and damaged some airplanes, ruined some things, and weren't doing a good job at anything they were supposed to be doing. So they had a new crew chief in. I got hired in under the new crew chief, and the guys working there right then were not the ones who destroyed the trust. We were the ones left paying the cost of rebuilding the trust. And that took years of work. And I can tell more on that story some other time. But anyhow, trust is costly to rebuild. Now, tonight, what we're going to do, and again, these we are working off of, and these commitments come from a book, 6 Gospel Commitments Every Marriage Should Make. That's not the exact title. 6 Gospel Commitments Every Couple Needs to Make. Okay, I did have the title almost right. By Paul Tripp. If you want to look up the book, you can find it, Amazon, whatever. But one of the things that he put in there, and the reason our handout is much longer this time, is I put these 21 questions that he put as a way to evaluate the trust in your marriage. Honestly, unless there's things I don't know about, which is possible, I doubt anyone in this room has managed to completely destroy their trust foundation stone in their marriage. Okay. But it's also possible that through little things, inattention, small things, maybe you have eroded and chipped away at some of that trust. And what we want to do tonight is look at some of that and look at ways to start repairing that trust and shoring it up so that it is stronger in the future. So, what we're going to do, I am going to, partially for the sake of the video and partially for time, I'm just going to read through these questions tonight. I would encourage you, take some time in the next week or two, just the two of you, and go through and answer these questions together in a very private environment so that you can both be bluntly honest with the other person. Okay? So let's just run through these questions. And I thought about like making some great mathematical recipe for adding point values to all of this and coming up with a score at the end. And Jeff said, I don't do math. So I didn't. What we're going to do tonight is look for things that make you go, oh, or make you look at your spouse and go, you saw that one, right? You saw that, right? And log that in the back of your head. You can talk about it next week after we discuss how to repair it.
Put a
Okay?
big star next to the one you want your spouse to look at.
Yeah. Write their name. No. Anyhow. All right. Question number 1 in the trust test. Is there more unity, understanding, and love in your marriage now than there has ever been? Okay. Number 2. Do you both do what you promise in the time that you have promised? Not just do you do it within the time frame that you promised to do it in? Are you attentive to what your spouse sees as important? Do you make excuses for failures to do what you have promised, or are you ready to confess? Do you listen well to your spouse and act on what you have heard? Do you follow through with mutually agreed upon plans? Do you work together on planning and scheduling priorities? Or do you demand that the other person do it your way? Do you share with your spouse your thoughts, desires, hopes, dreams, and concerns? Or is it easier for you to be quiet or to share with someone else? Is there any evidence that you have withdrawn from the other person in protective distance? Could your spouse say that you are good for your word and faithful to your promises? Some of these start to get a little repetitive, but then they start building and get uglier. All right. Do you carry wrongs around with you? Or do you trust one another to confront and confess? Do you ever wonder what the other person is doing when they're not with you? Are you conscious of editing your words and withholding your feelings because you can't trust your spouse to deal with them properly? Is your marriage partner the best friend in your life, or has your dream of this kind of companionship evaporated? Do you say things to other people about your spouse that you have not communicated to him or her? Do you look forward to sharing times together? And when you have these times, are they peaceful and enjoyable? Are there problems between you that remain unsolved because you don't have the bond of trust necessary to work together on a solution? Are you comfortable with the vulnerability that a good marriage involves. Do you ever wonder if you made a mistake in marrying the person who is your spouse? Do you ever fear that you are being manipulated or taken advantage of in any way? Do you ever wonder if your spouse cares for himself or herself more than they do for you? A lot of those questions, that's all 21. A lot of those questions, some of them we can almost, oh, and then some of them you get towards the end and it's like, wow, that's really scary stuff. Another quote that follows that I put on there. Trust is being so convinced that you can rely on the integrity, strength, character, and faithfulness of another that you are willing to place yourself in his or her care. The idea with that first quote, trust is readily given, that really kind of harkens back to the day you got married. Honestly, okay, just for fun, how long did you guys date? DeVernas.
4 years.
You guys dated 4 years. Mary and Kenny? Year and a half? Richard and Lisa? 7 years? Okay. 5? Okay. So, all right. Kenny married the shortest. Then you guys, then us, then them. And honestly, in this room, there's a reason most of the people in this room have been married for quite a while. We put some effort into that. We spent some time developing a relationship before we got married. Imagine people, and you guys are a year and a half. That's fairly quick for a lot of people. But there are people that, 6 months later, a year later, they met, they got married, and off they go. What they've technically done is say, I've known you for a year. I'm going to hand you trust and let's go and see what happens. Okay? Some of us who dated for longer periods, we had longer to actually develop that trust. But then once you get into a marriage situation, it becomes even more intense. Once you start combining finances, making decisions together, all of this stuff, the trust becomes more important and more easy to break. So, as you look through these questions, some, again, sit down with your spouse and go through these. Because I really think a lot of this, we might be chipping away at the trust accidentally. I don't think there's any malicious intent, but especially some of the, do you do things in the time frame you said you were going to do them? Do you make decisions together? Or do you just, well, this is what we're doing? Building that trust and maintaining it matters in a lot of small ways and on a daily basis. Now, if that reveals to you some things that you think, maybe we have chipped away at our trust. Maybe we have put some nicks into that stone. Now we're going to look at some passages, some biblical principles for repairing that trust. One of the things that I learned, and it was not my knowledge, it was a crew chief that I had who was in charge of the crew that was trying to rebuild trust. One of the things he said, guys, nobody trusts us, which means we can't just do the job right. We have to do it better than right. We have to do it better to start building back that trust. And he pushed that. He pushed and pushed and pushed for us to go over and above, over the top. Everything had to be better than required in order to rebuild trust. And that's what you're going to have to start doing. If you see an area in your life or in your marriage where maybe you've chipped away at that trust, then you're going to have to go over the top. So let's look. Matthew chapter 5. couple of biblical principles. And again, some of this is stuff we've already seen, but we're applying normal, regular, gospel, biblical principles to our marriages. Matthew 5:33. All right. Matthew 5:33 to 37. I'll read that. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but you shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it's the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make the hair, one hair white or black. Your kids can't. Anyhow, that may be deep in the Greek somewhere. Anyhow, let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. All right. First question, what is the most obvious application for this passage?
Let your yes be yes.
Okay. What do you
simple.
Okay, what do you mean by that though? When you say you let your yes be yes, what's your focus on that? What's your application? That's actually the principle. What's the application?
When you take an oath or you do something, you make sure what you say is correct. If it's yes, it's yes. You don't say yes and then turn around and do something.
Okay. Doing what you said you do. Okay. Being specific, doing what you said you do. You said you'll do it, you do it. You said you'll be here at such and such a time, you be there at such and such a time. You said, "Oh, I don't mind if we do it that way." You better be honest about that. You better not say, "Oh, I don't care. It's fine. If you want to do it that way, that's fine." I've seen different things on television, or on television. Yeah. On social media, we'll say that. The scariest thing is when you say something and your wife says, "Oh, that's fine." No, it's not fine. Step back and reconsider your life choices. Okay? And it's honestly a worldly philosophy, but according to the initial obvious application of this passage, shouldn't ought to be that way. If it's not fine, say so. If it is fine, say it and be fine with it. Okay? Now, that's the first and obvious. Now, the author of the book draws another application that I want to think about. Is there another way to apply this? You're looking at the principle, not exactly the specifics. Think about another way that this could be applied. It might help if I give you the specific way from the book and that I had written down. The first principle, okay? Let your yes be yes. We should be so honest that nobody needs an oath from us. They just know that we're going to do what we said. Okay? What would be, can you see another principle? And I realize I'm kind of digging, and I had the help of the book to point it out. Okay? So I'm looking to see if you see anything there. Okay, the application he draws out of this, and I don't think he's wrong, not necessarily the way I've looked at it in the past, but we should be so clear in what we say that our spouse has no need to wonder if they understood correctly. Just be clear and direct. So clear in what we say that our spouse doesn't have to wonder if they understood what we said. Now, there's times regular everyday communication in your home, especially a home with children, can be tricky. Because I can guarantee you every time Heather really needs to say something important, as she opens her mouth and starts talking, a child will make a very loud noise. Completely random, but they will every single time. So just regular communication can be hard. But then if in a marriage context, you're trying to slip in subtext, you're trying to get a point across with sarcasm, you're trying to say one thing, but they know that's not what I really meant. That's damaging to the trust in a marriage. And if we want to rebuild that trust, and I understand this is culturally, this is probably easier for Americans than it is for some cultures. I served in a country, and one guy was just his direct quote, well, frankly, we're not frank. And it's like, will you just tell me what you mean? Tell me what you're trying to say. Don't make me guess. Don't try and for us men, yes, we have to use tact. Okay? Be gentle in your honesty, but be accurate. Again, another one of the things that you see floating around, the most dangerous question any man ever hears. Does this outfit make me look fat? Okay. First of all, don't ask if you don't know the answer, ladies. And secondly, say it with gentleness, but give the truthful answer. And duck. But as married couples, what we mean should be obvious. There shouldn't have to be, and I know we talk about, I joke about, I don't take hints. I miss hints. If she wanted me to do something, she has to just spell it out. Better yet, it's our system. She sends me a text. Because I can keep looking back at the text. What was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to do? Oh, that's what I was supposed to do. She can tell me tonight, and tomorrow morning, I won't know. But if I look back at my texts, then I will know. How clear and direct are you? And if you haven't been, or if you find areas in this test where you see you're chipping away at that trust, then you should start working on letting your yes be yes, letting your speech be clear and direct. Just politely say what you mean and get it out there. All right? Ephesians 4:29. 4:29. All right. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. Let no corrupt talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. How have you heard this verse used or used it yourself? That question isn't actually on the thing. How have you heard this used or used it yourself?
It's one of the ones Baptists like to use for don't swear.
Okay. Over and over, you've heard it through your life. Chances are you may have used it with your own children. Let no corrupt communication come out of your mouth. You can't say that word. Not a wrong application, but a limited application. It's not everything that verse is trying to say, which is why the question says, what are Paul's 2 requirements for good communication?
Things
No
that build each
corrupt-
other up.
No corruption and edify.
Okay, no corruption, words that edify. Not only should we avoid words that are going to tear down that trust, but we need to add words that are going to build up that trust. Nothing that is destructive should be said. Everything that is said should build up. The positive of building up is just as important as avoiding the negative, especially if you find yourself in an area where you need to rebuild maybe some trust that's crumbled. Maybe not one that's been completely destroyed. And honestly, if you find yourself answering the wrong way to some of the last couple of questions, specifically ones like, did you make a mistake in marrying the person? Do you have fear of being manipulated by your spouse? Sometimes you may find yourself in a situation where trust has been completely destroyed and you're going to need somebody else to sit down with you and work through that. And if that's where you find yourself, you might want to set up more of a private individual. Don't like stand up and shout at me right now. Okay, Kenny, put your hand up. No. But if there is something deeper, then talk later. Okay, this is designed really to help us handle shoring up and improving the trust that we have, making it a stronger stone. So, as we look at this, communication that builds up, and we think about the commitment. What's the commitment? We will work together to build a sturdy bond of trust. Building projects don't progress well when you work on them once a month or once a week. Okay? In order to rebuild trust or to improve and maintain improved trust, we have to make this a daily practice, a daily habit. I was joking. Well, I wasn't actually joking last Sunday night. It was kind of funny, but I printed the sheets upside down again. And I said, it's not enough to identify the problem. You have to make a change. And if we're going to, it's a wonderfully applicable principle all over the place, not just to printing out sheets for Sunday night. If you see a problem in some of these questions, then you need to start making a plan. And one of the key ingredients of that is going to be language that builds up, language that builds that trust. And so you start, this is going to sound crazy, but I promise you, you already know that there is no possible way that you're going to be past 6 o'clock getting home. And so you promise your wife, I promise I'll be home by 6. Because it's a promise you can keep. And you just start building that trust up again. And she sees, wow, he actually made it home by 6 o'clock tonight. Or, I promise I will fall down the stairs on my way home, when I get home today. Just something, little things to start building that trust. Build up the trust. I won't use that one. Okay. I'll leave that alone. Things that cross your mind when they probably shouldn't. But anyhow, okay. Using our words to build up. All right. Moving on. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 14. Super common, super well-known verse. We've heard it lots and lots of times. Stand, therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth. and having put on the breastplate of righteousness. I'm going to say that quite possibly all of us in here have actually taught this at one point in time or another. Okay? We've gone through it, we've taught it, we've thought about it. But when was the last time it occurred to you to use the spiritual armor in your marriage? We think of it and we gear towards other spiritual battles. I'm fighting the spiritual battle. I'm fighting the Christian life. I'm going to be a good soldier for Christ. Folks, your marriage, and listen to the whole thing here, your marriage is a battleground. You are fighting Satan, who would love to destroy a Christian marriage. Every time Satan destroys another Christian marriage, he chips away at God's example of the relationship between Jesus Christ and the church. And he damages that over and over again. Folks, as Christians, your marriage is under attack. And the first thing Paul says, did I ask that question? No. What characteristic does Paul list first in the armor? Seriously, somebody answer that, please?
Well, I always started with stand rather than the belt of truth, because
stand isn't an armor, it's a stance. But it's not armor. And the question says, list first in the armor. Truth. Thank you, Mr. I'm going to overthink it engineer. Okay. Okay. The belt of truth. Okay, we know it, we've taught it. Now, the question, is this limited just to not lying? No, it's not. How would that expand?
gospel.
Okay.
Sharing the gospel.
Sharing the gospel. Okay, all right. Okay, I think I see where you're at on that. What is the positive side? Okay, we have the principles of communication. Don't say the corruptive words. Use words that build up. If you're going to build trust in your marriage, don't lie to your spouse. What's the positive side of that same coin then? Tell the truth. Speak honest things to your spouse. And not only that, but live with integrity. And this starts going back to some of the questions he had about, you promised to do it, but did you do it in the time frame you told them you would do it in? That's where we start living our honesty in front of our spouse. Not just avoiding the lies, but speaking the truth. Both sides of the communication principle there. All right? Definitely don't lie to your spouse. But we also need to live honestly before them and be honest with them. Never hiding things from them. Another part of that principle of the truth. The only exception would be like, Christmas presents. Okay? And I'll admit, I'm lousy at that. I really am. I would much prefer her to unwrap her Christmas presents the day after I bring them home. It's just easier that way.
From the Amazon package, preferably, so you
Yes.
don't have to wrap it.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, preferably I'd rather have her just open the Amazon box and be done. Saves the wrapping, saves the wondering, all of that. Keeping secrets, anyhow. But are there things going on in your life that you're not sharing with your wife? Now, there are times that there are certain parts of a job, depending on what your job is, Counselors and pastors sometimes are stuck. And there are just some things that I can't tell Heather. Now, most of the times you come and talk to me, I will say, I won't talk to anybody about this except my wife, unless you tell me not to. So just be forewarned, if you come and tell me something specific, you might want to tell me, don't tell Heather. Because I'll admit, guys, ladies too, I'm going to tell my wife most everything. And I know that's not actually the philosophy of some other people, but that is, I have to be honest with my wife. And now, if there's a specific reason, yes, I can say, I really can't tell you about this, things like that. But guys, what's going on at work, and can you tell your wife honestly what's going on at work? What's going on, I don't know, whatever. At church, is there something going on at church that you can't tell your wife about? Why not? Is there something going on at home with the kids that you can't tell your husband about? Why not? Anytime, and I don't know, I see it the most in all of these crazy TV shows. It always starts with, the person who's, the CIA agent, and they can't tell their spouse or something else. And, and even Hollywood will make it clear that it never actually works well. Eventually you're destroying a marriage because you're keeping secrets. We know this. So what are we doing to build up our marriages? Ephesians tells us, strap on, start with the belt of truth, being honest with our spouse. And yes, that goes back to questions about, does this outfit look nice? Well, honey, actually it doesn't. But it just doesn't. Okay. No offense to you. And most of the time, what I tell her, this is the shady way out. Okay.
So you're not being honest.
Oh, I'm being honest. I'm being honest. It's the slippery way out. I'll just tell her, honey, I'm sure you will make it look good. That is, I don't think that outfit looks good, but I'm sure you'll make it look good.
That's what he tells me when it's a print he doesn't care for.
Generally, yes. Some kind of weird paisley print that I'm not liking. I'm like, you'll make it look good. And she understands. There is no code. She understands fully. That means I don't particularly like it, but if she wants it, and she does. She always makes it look nice. It's amazing. You put the right woman in whatever outfit, and she just makes the outfit look good. But that's beside the point. Anyhow, okay. Not just avoiding lying, but speaking the truth, being honest, never hiding things, except maybe Christmas presents. All right. Or you could wait till the last possible second and go out shopping Christmas Eve.
Doesn't work either.
And nothing's left.
Well, that's true. Nothing's left. Okay. I was just thinking, that way you wouldn't have to hide from them. Yeah. Okay. One more. Well, not one more. A couple more. James 5:16. James 5:16. Hebrews, James. And I understand. I honestly don't think I'm telling any of you any brand new information tonight. But I'm trying to remind us of things that we already know and apply them to our marriages. All right. James 5, starting in verse 16. I absolutely love this passage. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person has great power as it is working. Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed fervently that it might not rain. And for 3 years and 6 months, it did not rain on the earth. Then he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth bore its fruit. What illustration of the power of prayer does James use?
The rain being stopped.
He uses Elijah
Elijah,
And when he prayed for no rain and nothing happened.
exactly,
Really long time.
stopped the rain. Elijah prayed for rain and it stopped raining. Then Elijah prayed that it would rain. He prayed for no rain and it didn't rain. And then he prayed for rain and it started raining. Okay. Elijah is used as an example of the power of prayer. Okay. Hang on, I got to write that down because actually I had it wrong in my notes. Funny enough. Okay. But right before that, what needs to be done before praying for one another?
Confessing your sins.
Confessing your sins. Now, again, the normal, natural, and perfectly accurate application of this is we need to confess our sins to God before praying. But specifically, actually, this verse says confessing to one another. Okay? Now, a couple of months ago, several months ago, we had a whole lesson on confessing our sins to each other. Sometimes that confession comes spontaneously. Is that the right way to say it? I realize I'm wrong. I confess my wrong to her. Sometimes that comes because she confronted me about my sin against her and I need to confess it. If we're going to build trust in our marriages, we have to apply this principle of confessing our faults one to another. As Christian brothers, as Christians in the church, we should be honest with our Christians and with our fellow believers. And I'm not saying hang our dirty laundry out for the world, but we should be able to confess, hey man, I am struggling with this problem. Will you pray with me? Will you help me? And everybody here, I think we understand our spouse has to be our first friend, our first accountability partner, the one who really does actually know us better than anybody else. They live with us. They see us when there's no makeup on, when there's no eye makeup on. Anyhow, that's another joke, another story. They see us, our wives see us when we're tired and sick and crabby and lazy. We see our wives when they aren't spiffed up and ready to go out. We see our wives when they're emotionally hammered and upset and the kids have destroyed their mental stability for the day and they're cowering in a corner. Okay. I'm not looking at anyone specific. Okay. I promise. I was thinking about maybe I should just look at the cabinet over there, but folks, we see each other that way and we need to build that trust. Where that trust gets broken down or the result of broken trust is I feel like I have to hide that from my spouse. They can't handle that. Or if I confront my spouse with what they've done, they're going to explode. Recent story, somebody I know, I would have always thought of them as, pretty good marriage. Everything's real nice and stable, smooth. They've been married. We'll just go with a long time. And he's a pretty mellow kind of guy. And a couple of weeks ago, the wife did something and that she's been doing for years, and he just exploded. And it's like, huh? What it said is that he's been bottling that up and not saying anything about it for a really long time. Now, the great part is that we were able to learn a very quick lesson. And so the very next day, Heather came to me and said, Jeff, please do not ever take the tail ends of the philodendron and tuck them back up into the top of the pot.
True story.
I had no idea that this caused serious grief for her, but it did. Okay, it's just, I'm doing stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, I just stuck that back up in here. It bothered her. But the whole point is keep the account short and be clear and honest with each other. Even the little things, because the little things start to build up. And we've got to keep the account short. Confess the faults. Say, dude, it actually really sets me on edge when you do that. Oh, well, no problem. I am happy to leave them hanging. I was going to go straighten them out, and she'd already hacked them off and shoved them in water. I don't, but just keep those accounts short. Making those daily choices. Well, I'm jumping ahead. Yep. All right. I don't want to jump too far ahead. All right. Let's keep moving. That was James. Let's go to Ephesians 5. Oh, wow. We are way running out of time. All right. Ephesians 5, 25 and 28. We were just in Ephesians, but we'll go back there. All right. I'm going to read 25 through 28 and then also verse 33. Husbands. Okay, yes. Very common marriage passage. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Jump down to verse 33. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. All right. And actually, backing up to verse 22, on the wives' side of this, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. Okay. How could these verses apply? We know they apply to our marriages, but how would they apply to building trust in our marriages?
It's hard to submit to someone you don't trust.
Okay. It's hard to submit to someone you don't trust. That's a huge application. What's another application? What else could we do with that from the wife's perspective? If the wife, okay, I think you're looking more on the negative side. I'm looking on the positive side to improve that trust. If the wife wants her husband to trust her more, we're looking at how to build the husband's trust. How can she help build his trust so that he sees her more trusting? He trusts her more. There you go. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, it says respect.
Respect him.
Yeah, respect.
Submit to him. Yes, it is hard and maybe dangerous, I don't know, to submit to someone you don't trust. But a husband who doesn't have to wonder if he's going to have to fight his wife over this is going to be able to trust her more. You get the idea? If I know that my wife is going, it's come down to it. I had to make a decision. I made the decision, but I can make the decision knowing, trusting that my wife is going to submit to the decision I made. That builds my trust in her. How about on the wife's side? If the husband needs to have, if I need to build up trust with her, like she needs to trust me more, what should I be doing from these verses that help build her trust in me?
Make decisions that show me that you love me as much as you love yourself.
Okay. Making decisions, showing love. Making those decisions based on her wants, wishes, desires, needs. It's easy to make financial decisions, time decisions based on what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to the range. So I made decisions based on that because they were my desires. But what were my wife's desires in that? Maybe her desire was to spend time with me without having to wear earplugs. Okay? And so I need to make decisions based on her. What is the biblical example of love? Doing what's best for the other person, not what's easiest for me. So if a husband is going to love his wife sacrificially, which is how Christ loved the church, then he's going to have to make decisions that might cause a sacrifice for him. But it's best for her. That's how he's supposed to lead. When a husband is making decisions, when a wife knows that he made a decision based on what's best for her and or what's best for the family, she's going to have an easier time submitting, and she's going to be able to trust him more. Now, if she realizes that he made the decision simply based on what he was in the mood to do that day, I'm in the mood to go to the range, so that's just what I'm going to do. She's going to have a hard time trusting his decisions. If a husband wants to trust his wife to trust him more, he's going to have to go back to this: love your wives as Christ loved the church. If the wife wants her husband to trust him more, she's got to go back to this: submit to your own husband, respect him. Okay? Using these principles, not just, in general, these are good principles for a marriage, but they directly apply to building the trust too. And I realize we've gone through some of these passages before, but we're making a little bit different application for them. All right, 4:26, Ephesians 4:26. We are rapidly taking up all of our time here. Wait a sec. No, that's 5:26. That's why that looked repetitive. All right. We've already touched on this a little bit. Ephesians 4:26, 26 and 27. All right. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. What's the obvious, you've probably heard it before, application of this passage to our marriages? Specifically, this is actually given to interpersonal relationships in the church. This wasn't individually given to marriages, but it obviously applies. How have we always heard it applied?
Don't go to bed mad.
Don't go to bed mad. Okay? Now, I will say, and I will add to that, don't try and make it a legalistic formula of something happened, I'm mad, it's 10 o'clock at night, so we're going to stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning until we're not mad anymore. Because I'll tell you, my attitude doesn't generally improve about anything as the night gets worse and I get more tired. Okay? The principle, and yes, if you're a couple that can stay up late nights and function well, great. Don't go to bed until you solve the problem. Sometimes each person does need a minute or two to get their own thoughts in gear and maybe a little bit of sleep. Now, the whole point, though, that we see in the rest of that, failure to confront, confess, and reconcile, what does that do? Meaning, don't give it too much time. Don't say, well, we'll sleep on it for a week or two. Okay? What does it do when we fail to confess, confront, and reconcile?
Puts the devil in position.
It puts the devil in control. It gives him something to work with. And I will say, when you're already mad at each other, take some time, but take some time with the Word. Take some time with the Bible so that the devil isn't whispering in your ear, God is whispering in your ear. Because if you don't have the Word with you, the devil will remind you of anything she has ever done that didn't make you happy. Okay? Every casserole that was burnt, every shirt that didn't get ironed, whatever, Satan will point that out. God will bring you to Ephesians chapter 26, chapter 5 and say, yeah, well, love her sacrificially, dude, get over it. Okay. Or ladies, he'll take you to Ephesians and say, well, respect him anyhow. Okay. Yes, maybe you have to take some time. So my point is keep the account short. Don't let it build. Don't let there be 10 small things in between you so that the 11th thing causes an explosion. It's the same, honestly, as raising kids. Deal with the problems your kids have when it's one problem. Don't wait until the kid has you mad to deal with their sin. Deal with their sin as soon as you see it's sin. This is marriage class, not parenting class. Back to marriages. Deal with the problem right now between you and your spouse. Don't wait until there's 5 or 6. Deal with it now when it's just one problem and one small thing and you can think clearly about it. Okay? Confront, confess, reconcile. It's got to be the principle that we work with in our marriages. All right. Conclusion. Trust in a marriage is not always destroyed in a monumental single event. Sometimes it is. That happens sometimes. I've seen it. Guy gets up and says, oh, yeah, well, while I was on a business trip, I was having a repeated affair with a coworker. Okay, well, that just completely nuked all trust in that marriage. One event, boom, it's done, destroyed. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes it happens in the little things. I know I said I'd be there. I know I said I'd get that done. Well, I know I said I'd help you with that. And then we don't. That trust can be chipped away at. Everyday little things erode away at the trust that was offered when you first got married. What we have to do is start building it back. Building it back with biblical principles. Taking this list, and I put it again here. Guys, we just ran through that list of questions. Obviously, we have a video going. None of us are going to stand here and start answering those questions out loud. Okay, I understand that. But take some time, just you and your spouse, sit down with these questions and say, hey, is there something I'm missing? What about this question? How would you answer that question? How would I answer this question? Asking each other those questions and then starting to build trust back in some of those ways that maybe those questions show. Maybe those questions bring to light areas where you've chipped away at that trust. All right? Any questions about this material tonight? All righty. Actually, I'm going to ask Kenny if you'd pray for us and we can wrap this up.
Dear God,